Hey everyone, today on the plastic canvas, we're painting Vance from Zombie 15. Hey guys, Matt here from the Plastic Canvas, and welcome back to another Zombie 15 video. So the first video, hopefully you've seen, was with Siphon, and that had a bit of an explanation at the start about like why these guys are sort of already half painted, and sort of what's going on with this series. So if you haven't checked that out, please go and have a look at the Siphon video. You'll get a bit of info there, because I'm not going to sort of go into that so much for this one. Just going to get into painting. But yeah, so another one of our survivors from Zombie 15, which is a 15-minute real-time zombie game. Really fast-paced, very, very quick, lots of fun, cooperative. So yeah, not going for a super high quality with these guys because they just don't spend enough time on the board, but still good enough so that they do the job. So yeah, so we've got Vance's card here. So he's our sort of green guy. All the characters in Zombie 15 have a really strong colour theme to them. If I just quickly bring back in Siphons from last video. So she's yellow, Vance is green, there's about 8 of them all together. So yeah, so started, got his shoes done, well, got a base coat everywhere except for his blades. So yeah, we'll get into keep going on with him. And just like, yeah, with the Siphon video, anytime I've got something to share, if I'm painting a particular part, something that I've learnt that's helped me, I'll slow it down. But yeah, I'll have a bit more just sort of solid painting in this one. So let's get into it. Just a quick note on the colours that I've got mixed together here, because we've got 2 different greens going on. So there's his single green, which is quite a bit brighter than his shorts, pants, 3/4 shorts, whatever. So I've got turf green, which is the base green for both his, I'll just lay him down so you can sort of keep track of that, which is the base green for his singlet and for his shorts. Then with his, mixed in with the turf green for his shirt is pale saffron, which is just really sort of brighten that up. And with going with his shorts is just some cloudy grey. So turf green, cloudy grey for his shorts, or sorry, 3/4 pants, and turf green, pale saffron for his singlet. One thing that did take me a little while was really sort of getting my head around how to play with colours, or play with a base colour, like whether it's a green or a blue or a yellow, to then bring it up to a different colour. Like not so much turning green into a different colour, but just a different shade of it. So yeah, I did a little bit of watching on YouTube of colour theory, starting with your primary colours, then being mixed to make secondaries, and then heading into your tertiaries, and then complementary colours and all those sorts of things. So it is definitely something that I think is a good idea to get your head around. Not something that you need to do straight away, but when you do want to start getting into playing with colours a little bit, it does help. And there's lots of information on YouTube about it. People that know far more about it than what I do, so I'm not even going to pretend like I know enough to start talking about it. But yeah, colour theory good thing to check out, just to get your head around. Even just for working with, picking colours that you're going to do. So, like say with your complementary colours, like on the colour wheel, blue is opposite orange. So blue and orange work well together. So if you're thinking of some colours to do, you can even refer to it just for that. But yeah, it definitely helped with me being able to work out how to manipulate colours. Because I will admit I had some interesting looking colours when I first started, but not saying I do it perfectly now, but yeah, at least a bit better. Just took a little chance here just to talk. I mentioned this in the last video, the Siphon one, just about the ordering of painting your minis. Order is in like which part you paint first, second, so on. So definitely the easiest way that I found is to start doing it inside out. So starting with the lowest layer, working your way up, and a good sort of rule of thumb I find. Well, that's not actually a rule of thumb, just a way of thinking about it is, imagine if you're the mini. So like if I'm Vance, how would I be getting dressed? And with anyone, if it's a person, going to start with the skin, and then just work your layers up from there. And I just sort of decided to stop and mention this because I don't know if you can tell, or you might be able to tell just in here. It's a little detail, but there's a little bit of where the skin tone has gone onto his pants. Now, obviously, if you think about the levels of these, the pants are going over the skin, so that stands out as something that's wrong. And so that's an easy thing to fix up if you're painting the higher levels or the higher layers. So now it's gone. The higher layers after the lower layers, and we try and not make mistakes, but if some of the paint from a higher layer goes onto a lower layer where it shouldn't be, if it's a little bit, it won't stand out the same as what it does if if the skin's going over the shorts, over the pants, that stands out because that's clearly not right. But at least if the shorts are going onto his skin a little bit, it just doesn't stand out as much. So you'll find that you won't do as much touching up if you start at the bottom and work your way up. Now, we'll be at some point doing a video just showing the paints that I started off with, which is just a Reaper starter set, not one of the Learn to Paint kits that comes with minis and brushes and those sorts of things. Just a set that came with paints. Regardless of how you go about it, though, definitely recommend picking yourself up. If you get a set, or if you just buy them individually, make sure you get some sort of metallic paint. It's a set that I've got. This is Blade Steel. So just this one here that I'm just using on his swords, on machetes, whatever they are. Often when I'm painting with this, I don't usually paint it straight on like this. I'll mix it with a colour, to try and give some sort of effect. But on his card, it's just straight up steel, and also again, just with the level of sort of finish that I'm going for, it just doesn't need to be anything more than that. But I have found there is a lot of minis, a lot of characters. Just looking at where that, I just need to repaint that handle before I paint that on. Yeah, a lot of minis, at least in the games that I've played. There's a lot of metal going on. And if it didn't have a metallic paint, it would, certainly for myself, be making my job a whole lot harder. So yeah, if you go down the road of getting a starter set, which I think is a really, really good way to go about it, check out if it's got a metallic paint. If it doesn't, definitely recommend picking one up. My set also has a gold in it, which I haven't used very often, but it is good to have there. And very important that you test your paints on your nail, because it makes it look like you know what you're doing. One thing that's really surprised me with painting minis, even from watching videos before I even started buying paints, was just how quickly the paint dries. It really doesn't take long. Obviously, if you use drying retarders or something like that, it's obviously going to extend the drying time. But it's really easy to work between multiple parts of a mini. Like here, I came through and painted this blade over here. Then I stopped and did his sort of sweatband sort of things. Quickly touched up a little bit of his singlet where I had some skin there, and then by that time I was pretty well ready to come back and do another coat on the blade. So I've really found that you can go back and hit spots a second time pretty quickly. The one thing though is that when using washes, you really want to let your paint dry properly before that. I've had a couple of times, once or twice, where I've thought it was dry, or at least thought it was dry enough, gone and used a wash, and then the wash just mixed in with the paint. I mean, not to a great deal because it was pretty well dry, but even just having a little bit of wetness still to it, the wash mixed in with the paint, and it really didn't work well, and I had to paint back over it, let it dry, and then do the wash again. And also the paint and the wash kind of mixed in a bit of a funny way at the tip of the brush, so then sort of really had to clean out the brush and start that again. So really found that the paint will dry quickly, at least to the point where you can then put another coat on top. It was just a matter of sort of minutes there really between coats on that blade there, and that's definitely dry enough so that I could do that do that second coat without then just sort of spreading the paint around because it wasn't dry enough. But yeah, if you're going to be doing a wash, I've definitely found you've really got to let that dry, or else it's just going to mix together. So he's sort of base coated now. There is a couple of little details that I need to do. There'll be, I don't know, it might be too small. Just looking at this card on this wristband here, so that one on this side, it's got a green line that goes around it. Actually, I need to do his belt that's in there, so that's something that I can do. And then needs a light green line around the bottom of his shorts, and then there's some green detailing on his shoes there, but they may, just because I'm going to use a different color, they may need to just dry just a little bit more. So I'll jump in and do the green around the bottom of his shorts. Might hit that belt, and then just a little bit of a touch up around this hand here, and then hopefully that'll be time for a bit of green on those shoes. But yeah, it's not the sort of thing where you sit down one night, do one coat, and then come back the next night, do another coat. Yeah, really, really easy to push through and get a mini totally, with a couple of coats, totally base coated in one night. Not a problem. As you can see, when painting sort of finer details like that, it's really, really easy to get lost in what you're doing. Nearly dragged him off the camera there. But yeah, so there's obviously while painting, there's multiple things that I'm trying to sort of develop as I'm going along, different techniques. But the two things that I've been really conscious of the whole time while painting is the consistency of my paint, and brush control. So, highlighting, shading, blending, things like that, they're things that I've been doing, trying to get a bit better at. But the real two things that at the end of every mini that I want to sort of get, can say, yep, got it a bit better this time, is paint consistency and brush control. So just, not having the paint too thick that just sort of globs and takes away some of the detail, not having it too thin that it sort of just runs and flows into areas that you don't want it to. So just so it goes on nice and smooth, it's really workable. And then with the brush control is just, if painting something like that, like a thin line for the belt, I didn't want to, it's taken me one go there, and I don't think I really need to touch that up at all. Because the tricky part there was, because I'd already painted the shirt and the pants, and the belt is kind of on top of his pants, his shorts, but under his singlet. I needed to keep that line quite thin because it's just a belt, but I didn't want to bring it up over the green of his singlet, because then I'd be going back touching up because the singlet's over the top of the belt. So just little things like that where just having that control to keep it nice and thin, and just going exactly where I want. And the reason I sort of try to focus on those two things is that I sort of figure any other technique, whether it's wet blending, OSL, highlighting, shading, whatever, is at its core is going to have those two things, going to need to have the paint at the right consistency and always need brush control, need the paint to go where you want it to go. So, yeah, whether those are the things that people normally recommend, I don't know, but those are the things that I've been focusing on. So if I try and do a bit of blending and it doesn't quite work out, I will, sort of learn from it. But yeah, every mini, just keeping that consistency right and looking to see, because now I've sort of got like the drying retarder, I'm mixing that in sort of most of the time. How much do I need to put in? And then being able to look at it on the palette and sort of saying, yep, that's looking good. Or being able to start to work out, now that's too thin, too thick, testing on my nail, things like that. Just, so that you're not waiting until you put it on the mini to work out, oh crap, that's too thin, it's flowing where I don't want it to. It just goes on and it's right. And that's definitely something that I'm getting better at. And then, with the brush control is just, not slopping it onto different parts and just making it take longer to paint because you've got to go back and touch up. So yeah, those are two things that I found have been good to start with. So I've just swapped over there just for this line around the bottom of his shorts, just from my detail to my insane detail brush. Sometimes you just don't need to be working against yourself, and even though the detail brush is for details, I just sort of thought just going that bit thinner, because if I just do a quick comparison, character. I'll just wash that bit of paint off the tip, just so that we're... Right, so there's a difference between insane detail and detail. Both obviously have a good tip, but just that insane detail is just that bit finer. And with something like this, I'm trying to get that fine line and not get any on his skin by having the shorter bristles and just much thinner through like the midsection there, just much less chance of just slopping it onto somewhere else. So it's not so much the tip in this case that I'm worried about, it's the actual thickness of the bristles, and just trying to just minimize my chance of mucking up and putting some of that paint on his skin. An absolutely pointless detail on a mini of this size, but got that little green line around his wristband there. There's nothing on that one there. So, but all those little things, like I mentioned just before about trying to focus on brush control there. It's just a little bit of a challenge there. See if I can sort of paint that without mucking it up. And just sort of what I was doing there, I don't know if I mentioned in this video, or if it was in the last one, the siphon video, when I'm painting a really thin line like that, rather than, back in the middle there, yep, that thin line there, rather than just getting like a bunch of paint on the brush and then trying to do that in just sort of one go, just get paint on the tip, paint a bit of a short line, go back, get more paint on the tip, and then just keep that line going a little bit more, go back, get more, come back, and just keep repeating that. So I find easiest just a bit of paint in the tip, just paint a little bit, go back, get some more, come back a little bit more. So lots of short lines rather than trying to do it in one long go. Because what I just sort of tend to find is that once you don't have enough paint right on that tip, because that's really the part that you're trying to use, that's the thinnest part of the bristles, then you start to push a bit more, and then that's just going to spread the bristles out and just thicken that line. And if you want to keep it really fine, you need to, I found that you just need to keep the paint just on the tip, and then just keep going back and just keep reloading just the tip of the bristles. Alright, so I didn't really realise at the end of the video, that last one there, it cut off a little bit short, but that's okay. I finished off his boots, just added some laces on there, and yeah, we've got that sort of green line going around the bottom and at the top. So yeah, he's looking alright in terms of base coat. So I think I'm going to get onto a wash now. So I'm going to use the flesh shade for the skin, obviously. Use my green wash for his singlet. And then I'm not going to use green for his pants because I don't want to turn them any more towards green. So I'm probably going to go with a black wash for them, just so yeah, it keeps that sort of greeny grey look, but doesn't take it any more towards green. And then and then probably yeah, a black wash on the on his blades, just to knock the shine off of them a little bit. And that'll just about do it for the moment then, because then obviously that'll need to dry before I go on to the next step. So I'll start with, probably do his skin first. So just Reichel and Flesh Shade. So again, I think I mentioned in when I was putting this wash on Siphon in the first video on this series, that yeah, the Flesh Shade is the one that I found the easiest so far to be able to go overboard with. And yeah, just to yeah, if you go overboard with it, really turns the skin dark and can go on sort of kind of inconsistently. And then when you try and highlight, like I like to put a wash on and then bring it back up with the same tone that I used. So this is tan skin, so I'll put the Flesh Shade on when it's dried, then highlight with tan skin, and then if there's any real sort of spots that I don't think I will with this, with a model this size, but then if there are any other spots, then sort of lighten the tan skin and then highlight again with that. But I find if you go too heavy with this and then go to highlight, it just looks like they've just got a horrible skin disease, because you just go from too dark to too light. So I'll be using quite a bit of water on the brush, and then just picking up a little bit of the wash, just to make sure it goes on thin. And if you go on thin and you need to add more, well, that's easy, you can always add more. But if you go thick and add too much, well, then it becomes difficult to take it off. So there we go, so that's the wash done on him, so that's looking pretty cool. It's amazing how different sometimes it can look different on the camera to where I'm actually holding it there. It looks much wetter on the camera than what it does actually there. I guess just picking up the light a little bit differently. But yeah, so yeah, so the green there, just Biltan green. No, this is for his singlet there. All right, so going to leave Vance for a bit now, so that he can have a good old dry before I get on to doing some highlighting. Because there's a little bit more detail in the material of his of his clothes than what there was with Siphon, so I'm going to be doing a bit more highlighting with him, add a bit of sort of texture and that to his blades, do his eyes, different things like that. But yeah, so he's well and truly getting on the way to being done. So yeah, not too much time in these guys. Yeah, just because they're fairly small minis and they just don't have the detail that draws out how long it takes. But they're pretty good fun to paint. Not too much of a challenge, but yeah, come along pretty well. So going to leave him for a little bit, and then come back and just do the last little touch ups and get some highlighting done, and he'll be done. All right, so I'll see you back when he's all dry. All right, so Vance has had a good bit of time for his wash to dry now. One of the things I sort of worked out fairly early on when I was using washes is that you really, really want to give them time to dry properly, regardless of which way you're working, whether you're putting a wash over a base coat, or if you're then going to be painting over a wash that you've done, you want paint and wash to be really, really dry. If you're doing a base coat and say you're doing like a second coat, that first coat doesn't have to be absolutely super dry before you can go back and do your second coat. But anytime you're going to be working with a wash, say you've done a base coat and then you're going to put a wash over the top, you really, really want that base coat to be dry, because it will mix in a bit of a funny way. And then same thing if you're going to do if you're going to be painting back over a wash, you want that wash to be dry because because they're different sorts of paint. They don't mix well. So Vance has now had a good bit of time to dry, and so you can see the effect that the wash has done, like especially on his shorts there. That was sort of the grey green colour. I used the Nuln Oil wash over the top, which is the black one, and you can see it's just sort of settled into the low parts, or the sort of folds in his shorts there. And then now you can see in some of these sections where it hasn't settled, and then we've sort of got those lighter bits where I'm going to be highlighting there. So yeah, what's worked for me when highlighting is doing my base coats, then a wash over the top, and then I come back with the same color as the base coat, and just so that the color matches, and then I paint where essentially the wash hasn't settled, because just as a bit of a guide, where the wash didn't settle is where sort of some light would be hitting. So when I'm going to start highlighting his shorts, well, even if we sort of flip it over to the back here, you can see where all of these folds are. That's where I'm going to be painting, but in these darker bits in there, something like in there, I'll be leaving that alone because that's where a shadow should be, and the wash has already created that shadow. Yeah, so I've just found the easiest way for me to do it is to just bring it back to the base coat color, and then lighten again from there if I'm going to be doing that really sort of finer highlighting where that light is going to be hitting the most. As like you sort of get better, if you're sort of watching different people painting on YouTube, they'll often pick a light source, like it coming from a particular direction. I'm not at that point yet. I just sort of highlight where generally, from a general light source it would be touching. So rather than picking, maybe coming from behind and lighting his back up more than his front, or vice versa, just imagining anywhere that light's going to be picking. So just the higher parts, and then when these are in the middle of the table and everyone's, because they are paint minis from board games, and when everyone's sitting around the edge, from that distance, that sort of seems to be the best look that I find. So yeah, so I'm just going to be doing some highlighting. Just using the base coat, and just picking up the spots where basically the wash hasn't settled, and just using that as my guide. Okay, so just from looking at it already, I can see that I don't have enough grey mixed in with the green. It's just not looking quite right. So I'm now just mixing some grey in with my mix that I've got going on, just to try and get that looking right. So we'll have another go at that, and See how we go second time. I'm also going to be just swapping to, I'm just painting with my detail brush there, just because of the size of these guys, they're so small. Like if I grab one of my paint bottles, so this is just a 1/2 ounce bottle, you know, you can see the size comparison there, so they're pretty small. So I'm just going back to my insane detail brush just to try and get those highlights a little bit finer. Alright, so that's given him a bit of a highlight. That's sort of coming up alright. Again, with this sort of game, with how closely these minis are going to be looked at, that's sort of enough just to bring out a couple of the details. I'm not spending much time in blending or anything like that, just getting it good enough. I'm going to do his eyes now. I ran through how I do this in the last video, the siphon video, but just in case you haven't seen that, I'll do it again in this one. So the way that I go about doing eyes, which is something a lot of people have a lot of trouble with, so finding a good way to do this is really, really helpful, is just with some black, I just fill in the eye sockets. So just starting on the nose side, just filling in the eye sockets, and at this point it might look a bit messy. That's okay, because I will be shaping the eyes. When we're done, so there we go. So just like that at the moment, just fill in the eye sockets in black. When that's dry, I'll then do the whites of the eyes. But the idea of that will be to leave the top of those the two like the black that I painted for the eye sockets. So just give that a little bit of time. Oh, sorry, give it a little bit of time just to dry. Probably looking all right. So yeah, now just some white, and just trying to leave the top of the black that I painted for the eye sockets. Again, at this point, doesn't need to be perfect. Really, it's just sort of mainly about having it sort of looking symmetrical at the moment. And that's sort of pretty good. Now it's just a little black dot for the pupils. Obviously the scale, we're not going to be worrying about actually doing the iris, doing any colour, just getting the pupil. Oh, a little bit heavy with that one, but that's okay. Again, at this point, it's just mostly about having it symmetrical, because now, with the skin tone, I'm just going to shape the bottom of the eye. I'm going to start on the nose side and work around, so start on the nose corner and then work around up to a point to the outside edge. Yeah, just something like that. Pretty simple. More than does the job for minis at this scale. All right, so just going to go on with his hair now, and then I'm going to do a couple of little effects on his blades, and then I think we'll just about be calling this guy done. Obviously, if this was a bigger mini, one that's going to spend more time on the table, be sort of looked at a bit longer. Quite a bit more time would be going into some of these more the more detailed parts, the highlighting that. But again, for the amount of time these guys spend on the table, it's just not worth spending more time. Alright, so that's got his hair done. I don't exactly have the steadiest hand, so trying to do thin lines like that was pretty tricky, but I think I sort of got that alright. On his card, like with his hair, so his hair's looking like that. At the top, like, because obviously they shave bits down the side, I wasn't sure exactly how this bit at the top works its way around to the back, so I thought I would just do lines going from the front to the back, just to keep it simple, but still to try and get that effect. So what I'm going to do now with his blades, just to pretty well finish off, I don't think there's really anything else that I'll worry about too much with Vance. Is just to give a couple of sort of damaged effects to the blade, and then some blood to go on there, and then a little bit of blood on his clothes. So to do this damage effect, I'm just going to grab one of my older brushes that I don't really use anymore. And in kind of the same way that I'm going to do the blood, just spreading those bristles apart a bit. And then what I'm going to do is take my metallic paint, the same one that I used to actually paint it. I mean, I did the black wash over the top. I'm going to take the same paint and then kind of just dry brush just sort of some flicks along it, just to sort of make it look like it's been used, a little bit damaged. Probably not really an effect that's going to be seen that much, but you never know, something to try. And you only get better when you try stuff. So I've just got a little bit of paint on the end. Might just leave that there, I think. But anyway, it's given a little bit of texture. Not exactly the look I was going for, but that's okay. So now I'm just going to add a bit of blood onto those two blades, and then a little bit sort of over his clothes, and then repaint the top of the base green so it really, really stands out on the board, and then I'm going to call him done. So when I first started painting the blood effect on all the zombies, I just used, that's not the right one. I just used straight red paint and the same kind of effect. So I just sort of spread the bristles. Actually, I don't know why I'm putting that away because I'm going to be doing that again. Just spreading the bristles and then creating a splatter effect, just kind of like dry brushing with the red. But just by having the straight red, it was just way too bright. It just looked like it had a fight with some red paint, which is exactly what had sort of gone on them. So then the second time around, when I had another go, I mixed in some brown just to kind of kill the brightness, because, you know, if this blood's dried or it's come from zombies who have been dead for a bit, it's not going to have that same brightness that it does when it comes from someone that's alive. So I'm just going to mix up a little bit of red with a little bit of brown, so it's mostly red. Just enough brown to just to dull it a bit, just to make it look like it's not fresh. All right, so that's the kind of color I've got going on there. So now I'll sort of wipe most of that off on my paper towel that's just off to the side, spread those bristles out, and yeah, it'll just be just creating a bit of a spatter effect. All right, so now we're looking like that. So it's just a case of don't know if the camera's really picking that up too well. Just a case of spreading that on. What I found when painting the blood on is like the drier the brush, or the less paint that's on the brush, the longer it looks like the blood's been on the surface that it's on, sorry, the surface that it's on. So, well, basically the drier that it looks. So if you want to get it to look a bit more like it's more fresh blood, just load up a bit more. I've got a little bit more red in this one, just for sort of on the ends where a little bit more blood's going to have hit, just to sort of give a little bit more of that kind of a look. And then as it sort of then just peters out, just a little bit more brown in there, not quite as much. Okay, so you might be wondering why I'm painting the base green instead of like a concrete sort of color or something like that that matches the tiles in the game, and that's just purely because each of the playable characters have like a very specific color theme to them. So Vance is obviously green, Siphon here is yellow, and they need to be able to be identified really, really quickly because of the pace of the game, and so having the green base rather than grey to sort of match most of the terrain on the tiles, it'll just help them stand out. So it's just more of an ease of play thing rather than an actual thematic decision. But yeah, so that's gotten a coat on there. It'll probably need a second coat, but we'll see how we go. But yeah, he's looking pretty good. So I'll let him dry and come back and do, yeah, I think another coat on his base. And then Vance is going to be done. All right, so we're back, and Vance has a dry base, but one coat down, so he definitely needs another coat. But this will be the last little bit of this video, because every other part of him is done. So just going to get this second coat on the base. so that we've got no black coming through, and then we're calling him done. So just a quick little bit to finish off. Alright, there we go. So Vance has had his final coat on his base, and we are going to call him done. Yeah, this guy was good fun to paint. I mean, like all the other minis that are in Zombie 15, they're very, very simple. You know, they're just good enough to do the job. But you know, a few different things going on there, a few different colours. You know, still sort of trying to create that good blood spatter effect. Tried a couple of different things in there, a little bit of texture on the blade that didn't sort of really work out, but I think, I mean, either part of that's my skill at the moment of painting, but also they're very, very small, so that'd be something to try on a bigger one. But yeah, so pretty happy with how he's looking. So yeah, that's another survivor done. So yeah, so if you've stuck around to the end, thanks very much for giving up your time to watch me paint this guy. Really, really appreciate it. You know, it's why I'm putting these videos out there, so that you guys can either, you know, enjoy watching them, or, you know, just as something to do, or if you've picked up anything along the way from things that I've shared, that's fantastic. Please do leave a comment down below. If there were things that you really enjoyed, please let me know. If there are things that you think I can improve on, please let me know that as well. I want these videos to be as good as possible so that you guys can get everything out of them that you can. And you know, if I don't have anything sitting down there below, it's hard for me to work out what you guys want. So yeah, please do leave a comment below, something that you like, something that you think could be improved, just to make sure that everyone can get as much out of these as possible. And yeah, so if you enjoyed, please do like and subscribe so that you can keep up to date with when these videos are coming out. And yeah, if this is a game that you've got, stick around, check out the other Survivor videos. And yeah, thanks for your time, and I will see you guys on the next video. Cheers.